This I was actually intending to give a talk about something else. I was originally going to talk about the economic benefits of EVs and how we're spending $9 billion a year on fossil fuel, and maybe what better use we could be putting that money towards in New Zealand. But with the government policy coming out yesterday, I've spent pretty much all day yesterday and today sort of just trying to distill it down into some sort of real basic elementary sort of take, and also maybe some things that it could be doing a lot better. Because I think a lot of people would agree that it's really awesome that we are actually having something out from the government about electric vehicles. They acknowledge that they exist. But there are a few issues with the policy that they've announced so far. So I'm just going to try and talk you through that. This is about a 48-page document originally that came out from the government, and I've sort of distilled it down into hopefully not too many slides. We'll see how your attention goes. And then we'll have a small break after my presentation and get some food, and then we'll have our last speaker tonight after that. And I haven't had time to practice, so I'm going to have to be referring to my notes a lot. There we go. So first, let's have a look at the problems that these policies are trying to solve. In terms of emission targets, New Zealand is one of only 3 developed countries that has no regulations on vehicle emissions quality. The other 2 are Australia and Russia. As a result, we have the most fuel inefficient vehicles and polluting fleet in the world out of any OECD country. So that's us at the top, 180 grams of particular emissions per kilometre driven. And looking at the same timeline, we have Mexico on 145, we have China that's 117, and Japan 122. And India is even better than us as well, which is something that I was quite surprised by. The Clean Air Standard policy proposes to set a standard maximum of 105 grams with a gradual phase-in, with 2025 being the time of the actual limit of 105 grams applying. While more EVs are being sold in New Zealand than ever before, there is also an increasing supply of larger, more higher emission vehicles. As a result, the average vehicle fuel efficiency and emissions has actually not decreased. So we have not made any progress, despite the EV adoption that's been taking. Everyone else that has massive fuel emitting vehicle is bringing down the EV owner's contribution. The government is committed to taking action on climate change. The New Zealand Productivity and Interim Climate Change Committee have both recommended prioritising action to reduce transport emissions. This action has to stop the annual increase in transport emissions and put the sector on a path to net zero carbon emissions. That's something that's in our international agreement. This means that our current best case scenario for EV adoption, the blue line, does not result in light vehicle emissions reducing in line with our 2030 or 2050 targets. And I don't know if you can see this very easily, so I just pointed it out. So the blue line is what we currently set to have with our fleet emissions. So that means this here is our 2030 target. This is when it's supposed to be achieved by. At the moment, we won't be achieving it until 2040, and we're very far off having zero by 2050. If EV adoptions are slow, which is the orange line, we will still fail to reach our carbon target by a huge amount. We're basically looking at reaching our 2030 target by 2050, 20 years behind. If we want a largely electric fleet by 2050, nearly all new registered vehicles would need to be electric by the early 2030s. The Ministry of Transport projections suggest that only about 40% of vehicles entering New Zealand in 2030 will be electric, without further government incentive or regulation. And the green line on this graph, the dotted green line, is what we would have projected to have under the new proposed policy. So it's actually still not getting us to that 2030 target. It almost looks like they've sort of given up on that as being possible. But that's what they're hoping to achieve from this new target, is a slightly better outcome. So this is basically how the clean car discount would work. So we're now talking about the second policy, the clean car discount, as opposed to the clean car standard. So the discount seeks to incentivize cleaner car purchases by putting a surcharge on higher polluting vehicle purchases and giving that discount to cleaner car purchases. The surcharge rebate amount would shift as we get closer to 2025, progressively incentivizing ever more cleaner cars. The discount would only apply to new registrations entering the country, so existing fleet would not be affected. The scheme would aim to be revenue neutral, with the discounts paid for from the fees. That means that people who buy high-emitting vehicles are subsidising the cost of vehicles for people who choose low-emission vehicles. The fee they pay recognises the increased environmental and economic costs imposed on purchasing vehicles with higher CO2 emissions. The Ministry's cost-benefit analysis says that it would present a cost-benefit ratio of 2 to 6 by 1 and is a net present value of 413 million. Most of the benefit would be to motorists from fuel savings, and it's estimated that motorists in New Zealand would save about 627 million on fuel, or about 5,000 per vehicle, from adopting these standards. And that applies to everyone, not just the people that buy EVs. I'll just talk about this a little bit because it's a bit hard to get your head around. The zero band is basically cars that aren't that bad. So everything that's sort of got small emissions is in that bandwidth. Everything that's got high emissions is down below. They'll be, up above, they'll be paying the fee, and everything below that, which includes the likes of low emission vehicles, would be receiving some sort of rebate. The zero band actually shifts, but I'll get into that later. So this is a schedule of payments for year one. The proposal is to alter the schedule and rates every year until 2025, with the emissions profiles gradually shifting to be less and less. There are different schedules for new cars and used cars, but new is suggested to include cars up to 3 years old. And I'll just sort of shout out some stuff up here. So you've got your Ford Focus at emitting 141 to 150 particulates in 2021. Would be receiving a cash payment or discount of $600. But as we sort of get further away, and I'll sort of show you that a bit later, that car would be one of the ones that is deemed as too dirty. It does not fit within that 105 target that we're aiming to have by 2025. But this is basically the idea of how they'd initially phase it in and then shift those bands downwards as we go forward. So that's the two policies. Clean Car Standard puts a requirement for cleaner emissions on imported vehicles with financial penalties for importers for not meeting those requirements. The Clean Car Discount aims to make fuel-efficient and low-emission vehicles more affordable for New Zealanders to purchase. Both of these pieces of legislation could be really beneficial to our country, but there are some major problems with the way that they're suggesting to implement these. So we're going to talk about that. So the Clean Car Standard. Currently New Zealand has the highest car emissions of the OECD, and while this proposal will improve things, by 2025 we will still have one of the highest in the OECD. If we are aiming for 105 grams by 2025, that means that in 2025 we will still have higher vehicle emissions by a significant margin than USA, Canada, EU, Japan and South Korea. 12 years ago, China, Japan, South Korea and the USA introduced mandatory emission standards. 12 years ago, a decade. So we've got a wee bit of catching up to do, but there is hope. In 2011, Japan set 2015 targets and 2020 targets. In 2013, just 2 years later, they reached their 2020 target of 122 grams. They are now on track to achieve 82 grams by their 2020 target. The New Zealand market is mainly supplied by Japan and UK spec vehicles, new and second-hand. The current proposal is to lag behind these markets by 10 years. However, instead, we could be aiming for a 3-year lag. We would still look at the EU and Japan for an emissions target. They are aiming for 80 and 82 respectively for 2025, which means that we should be aiming for 82 in 2028 and something more like 100 in 2023. Because New Zealand is a small market, the reality is that our manufacturers will not start making cars for our market, but we can still benefit from cars made by other markets. The risk is that by being so far behind the rest of the OECD pack, even in 2025, we will perpetuate our worst fleet emission status. The current goal proposed by this policy does not achieve our climate targets as admitted by this policy. We shouldn't be aiming to fall short of a critically important commitment, we should be aiming to meet it. Clean car discount. With the publication of this potential policy, there is the concern that it will put a dampener on EV sales over the next 3 years, thus cementing the failure of New Zealand to meet the previous government's goal of 64,000 EVs by 2021. Anyone know the current number we have at the moment? 15,000. Way to go, and it's 2019. The question most people will ask themselves is, why buy an EV now if I can wait for several years and save $8,000? The main incentive for electric vehicles until now has been no road user charges, or RUC, until the end of 2021, or 64,000 cars, 2% of the fleet, as laid out in the original policy document. As covered in by the International Council on Clean Transport report, fiscal incentives are powerful mechanisms, but are not the only factor that influence EV market growth. Policies that apply both at the time of purchase and throughout the vehicle's lifetime influence a consumer's vehicle choice, and thus can yield greater CO2 reductions than a single time of purchase policy only. Removing this discount now disincentivizes purchases today and should be postponed until EV numbers are substantial or we are on track to meeting our emission targets. EV owners do need to contribute to the maintenance and development of the road network, but removing RUC sooner rather than later will harm EV uptake, which is directly contrary to the stated government goal. Removing RUC would mean that a Nissan Leaf, which has zero emissions, will pay triple the road tax of a Toyota Prius. Fully electric vehicles are the only vehicles which will get us closer to our eventual 2050 net zero emission target. The cap at $80,000, and I didn't mention this, but there is a cap of $80,000 for the discount, is poorly conceived if the stated desire is to incentivize the purchase of low emission vehicles in comparison to high emission. A buyer at this level is still a purchaser of a vehicle which will contribute to the fleet emission benchmark. The reason there is a gradual scale is to do with the realities of the availability of clean cars and supply. That's to do with the clean air standard. So with the clean air standard, you can't just say to manufacturers of new vehicles, oh, we've got this new standard, because then they don't have any cars to sell us, and people get very angry because they can't buy a car. Incentivizing vehicle sales that are outside of our eventual goal, however, is not the right way to do this, because those cars are still available. It's just that you have to make a choice as to which car you want to get. Even at 105 grams by 2025, a Toyota Corolla would get $600 from the scheme in 2021 and be driving emissions at 50 grams past the clean car standard until 2060. The first year of the clean car discount should start at the rate we want to achieve to incentivize adoption of that goal. The light vehicles that enter New Zealand over the next 5 years will lock in emissions until at least 2043. That is because a new vehicle is driven until it is, on average, 19 years old. All right, this graph is a bit complicated. I'll try and talk you through it. This is the overall program. As time goes on, cars shift through the bands and applicable fees change. The goal is to be revenue neutral, so reduction in discount reflects the reduction in the quantity of fees they anticipate collecting. So just to spell it out for you for those at the back, the top row here is the subsidy and fees for year one, going down to subsidy and fees by 2025. You can see on there, this is for new vehicles. And that example I mentioned before, where if you buy a Toyota Corolla that emits between 141 and 150 particulates in 2021, you will make $600 of a discount. Yet if you buy the same car in 2025, you will be starting with a $1,000 fee. A better approach would be to incentivize the sale of lower emission vehicles by having more of a reduction on the fee. The initial discount ranges from $8K to $600, yet the fee ranges from $2,000 to $3,000. A more optimal approach that doesn't incent the purchase of high emission vehicles is a more gradual fee curve, for example from $500 to $3,000. Currently the scheme has no range requirements for FEVs and treats them similarly to BEVs despite a massive difference in emissions. The incentives for non-plug-in hybrids are similarly outsized when compared with the benefits of full electric vehicles and the fact that they actually help us get to the net zero target at 2050. There should be better provisions for older electric vehicles due to the high upfront costs of battery electric vehicles and their suitability to the New Zealand market. The new rate of discounted payments includes full electric vehicles that are only 3 years old, but we suggest 5 years old would be a better fit. So that's pretty much the scheme. We need the community to come together and submit in support of this policy, but also ask for a better policy. If we take no action, things will only get worse, but taking the wrong action or not enough action will still result in a less than favourable outcome. There's a lot of stuff that goes on into the policy, and I'd encourage you to read it if you have a couple of hours spare. But otherwise, what I have done and have been working on is writing out a PowerPoint similar to this for both the clean air policy and for the clean car discount. The submission document from the government as it is currently has several questions, actually probably more than several, a lot of questions relating to what they would like feedback on for different parts of the scheme. And it's my intent to provide a submission form that has our recommended and researched suggestions as to what they should be doing with this scheme. And I'd really love it if people could look at that policy submission guideline and either use our suggested submissions or tinker and edit as you see fit. But the idea is that we would love to have everyone submitting on this so that we can have a better policy. That's pretty much it. Thank you.